Welcome to Lessons After Sessions. I'm Jen.
Welcome. How you doing, Jen?
I'm doing really good. How about you?
I'm doing really well too.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you.
We were talking about alienation and we were describing kind of what it isn't. Where do
Mm-hmm.
you think we go from here?
And, this is such a really broad topic. And when I think of it, I've kind of been, I have been on the receiving end of this. And so I've really lived it and experienced it in addition to, of course, working with a lot of people who are going through it too. And when I think of it from that perspective, I think, what would I want to know about alienation? What would I want to be? What would I want to hear? And I think when I was experiencing it, a lot of it, because it was very new and I really didn't know, I saw these things that were going on, but I didn't really understand. I was trying to find some sort of definition or reasoning for why my child was behaving the way they were behaving. And as I
Yeah,
started coming through it, I started recognizing, oh, okay, because this is happening and that is happening. And so I think kind of what are some of the signs, and kind of validating that for parents too. And I want to kind of be able to put in there that there are some pretty distinct ways. It's kind of crazy to me how kids respond pretty consistently.
absolutely they do. They do.
Mhm. And that's really bizarre, when you think about how manipulation works, that cause or certain actions have a response, a set response. And so I kind of would like to think maybe kind of delve into some of that.
I think that's great. I think that's a really great place to start on sort of our second part of our series because in working with so many families who are going through this, there are really set things that you see. And I think talk us identifying what to look for in kids, but also maybe some signs too, even from the ex that you're separating or divorcing from.
Mhm.
And one of the top ones that jumps out at me is if you had a very typical relationship with your child or children, meaning you guys got along, but you had your typical arguments, but it was just a very typical loving relationship.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, you're starting to see that the child or children are really pulling away from you, and
Mhm.
nothing else has happened except a separation or divorce.
Mhm.
And it's not that they're pulling away in the sense that they're trying to process for themselves this change in their family dynamic. It's a pulling away like they seem really disgusted by you. They seem really angry. And when you see them with the other parent, it's a lot of love. They're always talking to the other parent even when they're at your house. That's a big sign that there could be something going on. There could be some manipulation by the other parent.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I'm talking about? That
A hundred
just
percent.
really change in attitude. All of a
Mhm.
sudden, everything about you is wrong. Everything about your history together
Mhm.
as parent and child, all of a sudden it's rewritten. There were
Mhm.
no good times. There's these absolutes, never, none, always.
That's a big one. Those never and always. Another thing that comes to mind is maybe a child will throw in your face some sort of a detail about your personal life that you've never shared. Um,
Huge,
you
huge
know,
sign.
yes. So, for example, well, you never, or you spent too much money going to, buying clothes for yourself. Or maybe you used to date so and so, or you've dated so and so, or now you're with so and so. Having personal details about your dating life that you would never share with your child, personal details about court, if there's a court battle going on. So things that you've never shared that oddly a child knows of, like, maybe the question could be something about, well, I heard in court that when you went to court that this is what happened or that is what happened. Well, no, that's usually damaging. So really being in tune to what you hear. Another thing that I experienced is kind of what I felt like was I was being spied on.
Yes.
And so everything that I had done with my children, somehow my ex found out. And so one of my children was being manipulated into feeding details of our time together back to, and then what I learned is that they were critiquing everything that I did every second of every day. But I caught the spying. So that was a sign for me of like, this isn't normal. Why is my kid reporting back about everything I'm doing inside the house, even things as innocuous as like mowing the yard or cleaning the bathroom.
Exactly, exactly. And in that same vein, if all of a sudden your child is evaluating how you do those mundane tasks,
Mhm,
only takes you 5 minutes to clean up.
mhm,
Wow, gosh, you don't mow the lawn, often enough.
mhm.
These are signs that again, the other parent is feeding them um, guidelines, expectations, opinions, and the child is now sort of parroting that
Yes.
and really being influenced. And they're coming at you to sort of challenge you on your parenting abilities based on what the other parent has
Mhm.
shared with them.
Yeah. And it's very undercover in the way they do it. I mean, I think back to kind of that time in life, and I mean, everything I did was wrong. So even how fast I drove, whether or not we were on time, whether or not I showed up with the right, food for their lunch, whether or not I showed up to something, like if they had an event, what I did with my spare time. So, like, if I would go and exercise after work and they would spend extra time at grandma and grandpa's, what were you doing? Why were you not here? Why were you not with us? You were supposed to pick us up at this time. You care more about this than you do about us. You might care more about working out than you do about being with us. It was just this constant of I could not breathe. Nothing I did was right. And that's not natural for a child to think those things. That's absolutely planted in their head.
Absolutely. Kids don't view their world or their parents through that lens unless they're being manipulated and influenced to do so.
Mhm,
Because kids just kind of accept how they grow up. I mean, how many times have we heard an adult say, "Well, this is just how we lived, and I just assumed that was normal."
mhm,
So to have a kid in that time frame of their life, being an adolescent, questioning you and challenging you and telling you that you don't do this well enough and you shouldn't spend money here. It isn't typical at all. And those should be big warning signs as a
mhm,
parent that okay, we need some real intervention here because as that goes longer and the child is now sort of joining with that alienating parent,
mhm.
it can be devastating
Yes.
and often very difficult to turn around.
Mhm. Well, yeah, because what ends up happening is the child is made to feel that even spending time with the other parent, they become so enlisted in this hate campaign that even spending time with the other parent is something that they completely reject. So then they start refusing to be with you. Period. Like they don't even want to come home. They can't wait to go back. When they are there, they're just combative. They don't follow any type, like, used to have this really sweet, pleasant child. Now all of a sudden everything is an argument. They completely reject any rules or any type of
And
boundaries that you have set inside your house. Everything just kind of falls apart. And you're just sitting there going, what just happened? So
absolutely.
and I didn't think I had loved my child any differently. Yes, things personally aren't going well, but my love and my ability to be a parent hasn't changed since you're just completely destroyed.
So destroyed. And I think when you start to see those signs, the way you can kind of look at, okay, is this other parent actually doing this?
Mhm,
Or has just something hit my child that, we need family therapy or we need to spend more time together. When you talk to that other parent and say, hey, I'm getting this text that, this child doesn't want to come back tonight when you're, supposed to be bringing the kids.
Mhm.
And that parent says, I don't blame them. I don't think
Mhm.
you should make them. What do you think would happen when you're out exercising and going shopping? Whatever it is, that's when you really, I think, need to be aware that this parent is probably and likely alienating. Because
Yes.
even if you're not getting along with someone you're separating from, if you really have your kid's best interest in mind and you're just a kind of typical healthy human being, you're going to work together and say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't know those texts were happening. I will be sure to talk to them. They will be there. Don't you worry. Do we all need to get together and get to the bottom of this?" So if you've got this other parent that you're reaching out to and saying, "Hey, what's going on?" and they are just as aggressive, they are just as mean, they are saying the same things the child is, or the child starts saying things that that adult, that other parent is telling you in text. Um, that's a really good sign to know that there's probably alienation.
Well, that the alienation in and of itself. So, and we talked about this last time, like, what is it? Well, I think, when you start seeing these behaviors from a child, then I think the alienator has gotten control at that point. And that's a really scary place to be. But I think the other part of that is being able to identify, okay, that's where this is. And based on their responses, based on the things that you're hearing and figuring out, okay, what do I do now? Because that's really scary. How do I prevent? Because it's heartbreaking. And I think a lot of times what we meet that with is, well, I'm going to combat this. I am going to go in and I'm going to fight and I'm going to, I'm going to say, no, 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 no. That's not the way this is. Or if you disrespect me, then I'm going to punish you for this. Or, that's not how I am still your mother. You can't rewrite me, or I am still your father. You can't completely take me out of the. So a lot of times your instinct is to try to control the behavior of the child rather than being able to take a step back and realize, wait a minute here, this kid is literally a weapon.
Remember, this level of alienation, when it's intentional, is abusive.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the child is a victim. The child is a victim as well. Like you're saying, I see a lot of people who get really mad at their own child about it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, and I get it. It's hard not to because I mean there can be some really harsh things coming out of their mouth, but it's all because they are being abused. So it's just going to make the problem so much worse if you start disciplining and trying to then share your side of things. You don't want to join in oversharing, giving adult information to
Oh.
kids just to prove that you're innocent. You don't
Mhm.
need to do that.
And I think that is probably one of the biggest challenges is I have to defend myself. This is so wrong. Like I can't just sit back and let this picture of me be painted. That's not who I am. And you're absolutely right. The worst thing you can do is go in and try to defend yourself. Literally the worst thing you can do. Because then you get and that's kind of like the manipulation piece, like that's what they want. Because then, oh, wait, so now we're going to take that, we're going to use that also. But I think it also, it was described to me kind of when I was going through it in a variety of different ways. And I think there was three things that kind of really stuck with me. And one of them was, it's like Stockholm syndrome. So we hear of what Stockholm syndrome, it's brainwashing, literally.
Yeah.
And a child's brain is not in a position where it can really differentiate between when they're being manipulated or brainwashed or not. They're very vulnerable. They're very naive in that their brain is not able to come in and say, wait a minute here. Now it does eventually that happens. But in that space and time, I think that's why it's so effective is because children are they're just
They're
vulnerable. They're
malleable.
malleable. Yeah. And so then that leads me to the next thing that I heard that I think is so accurate is that alienating parent is using a child literally as a weapon. And so when we talk about somebody being abusive, who would do that to their child? Because it's for their personal gain. It's absolutely hurting the child because it's robbing the child of a relationship with a parent, which is, we know, essential for development. So
Yes.
you're abusing the child to get what you want. And then the third thing that really stuck with me that I thought was really powerful, and this actually kind of came later on when my children were grown and was positioned to me this way, is that dad hated you more than he loved me.
Gosh, that's profound.
Mhm.
That's profound. Imagine a child, whether they're still a child and realize that, and that's unlikely, or they hit young adulthood and they realize that. The pain for that kid to actually realize that a person who played a pivotal role in my creation
Mhm.
hated the other person who played a pivotal role in my creation more than they loved me, more
Mhm.
than they wanted me to have stability, success, self regulation, self worth.
It's profound. And when you say abusive, that's why it's so abusive.
Yes.
Think about the level of abuse, the destruction that that causes a child and their ability to just function in a way that they absolutely should be able to, whatever that looks like growing up, but to feel safe. And the other part is when you destroy the other parent, you're destroying a part of your kid. They're part of mom is so bad, or if dad is so bad, what does that say about me? And they may seem like, you're the alienator may say, well, I got him. Like they see it like the other parent is so awful. But I've said this a million times. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Alienators are sprinting. They're trying to cause the most destruction and damage they can in a short amount of time, but they are not at all thinking about how they're going to get to the finish line.
And the parent who is being alienated against has to run a marathon. They
Yes.
can't join the sprint because that's where they make those mistakes of trying to defend themselves, oversharing, getting angry at their child for how their child's treating them. There has to be a recognition. There has to be an ability to step back and say, okay, for me, this is a marathon. I am going to continue to show up,
Hmm.
continue to show love, continue to do all the things that I know I should be doing as a loving parent, because at some point my child is going to have their brain fully developed,
Hmm.
which they say right around 24-ish. And they're going to have a whole different level of understanding looking back on how all of this went. And I see that time and time again.
Yeah.
The older the child gets,
Oh, yeah.
they start to see things a lot clearer
They do.
and really appreciate that parent who didn't make them feel shitty,
Hmm.
who stuck by them, who didn't engage in sort of that warfare
Hmm.
of alienation.
Absolutely. That marathon thing, and running a marathon is hard, right? Like you've got to hydrate. You have to take good care of yourself. You have to train. You have to, there's so many things that go into it. So think about it if you think of it in those terms, very much so. But, kind of going back to that alienation piece, I think too, or the signs and symptoms of it, I think one thing that I recognize is that it's, we've talked about a very specific kind of something that fits, that's really kind of vanilla and basic as to the signs and symptoms. But I want to kind of preface too that it can look so different, that I've seen alienators go to extremes, such as to accuse the other parent of sexual or physical abuse and actually cause those types of cause some sort of evidence to occur to the child in order to prove that, to get the child away. I mean, I have seen this explode into ways that I can't even fathom.
Me too.
It's unbelievable. So, there's tons of, I mean, it looks so different, but I think the bottom line always kind of comes back to the way the child responds to that eventually, because it does a lot of times take a little bit of time, but then also how they respond to it and then how you respond to it, which I think how we respond to it and how we run that marathon and what we do about it is a whole nother podcast, which I think
That'll
probably will
be
piece, our
yeah,
third
that's a
piece. Yeah.
whole. Because you're right. And when you, boy, when you say, because it can show up in so many ways. However, one of the core things that I see across the all the cases I've been involved in. When a kid has an opinion that one parent is all bad and the other parent is all good, you know you're in trouble
Yeah.
because that is such a clear sign of alienation and not normal. Nobody is all good and all bad, and even kids are able to say, "Oh gosh, I hate when my mom brushes my hair and I hate the way my dad cooks spaghetti," or but all of a sudden there's nothing good about one parent and there's nothing bad about the other. I really want to hit on this because it's something that is also a common thread. When you're at the place where the child has now joined in on the alienation, they have bought in and they're an active participant, again, due to the abuse, you will often always see that anyone in that parent's family is now bad. It is they all of a sudden don't wanna spend time with that grandma and grandpa, those cousins, that whoever. All of a sudden, they've always been, "Oh, we were never close." And you have absolute evidence that of course
Mhm.
we were. Of
Sure.
course you spent time with, you know, Mimi and Papa, whatever. That is another real clear sign because in order for the child, which again will be another podcast, in order for the child to fully join and live in that incredible negative, hate filled space with their alienating parent, they have to X out everything because
Mhm.
otherwise, those blips of reality start to creep in. And that's too difficult for them to process, which again is why this is so damaging to a child.
Yeah. And I think kind of that, yes, you're absolutely right. And that's, I'm really glad you brought that up because that is a big one too, is it's not just you, it's everything with you. Everything associated with you becomes toxic. And that is part of the alienator's design. A lot of times they don't just focus on you, they focus on everything around you because they also recognize that if there's anyone that can come in and change that narrative, that's a threat. So we have to eliminate any threat possible. But the child also, I think, follows suit with that pretty easily because for them, again, the black and white, I can't like anything that's associated with this parent, period, I have to put over here in this other place. I cannot have it be two things at once because this parent who is now become my lifeline, this parent who has now become the best person in the world, I can't stand to lose them. So I have to subscribe to all of this, which means that I can then I have to
Correct.
reject everything else.
Yes, you're so right. Because now that parent is their only source of love, affection, protection.
Mhm.
Um, and it starts to feel very, very scary to think about losing that.
Yeah, very much so. And the other
Mm,
part of it is that, another sign that kids do, and I know we need to wrap up, but I want to mention this too. Another thing is that anyone who challenges the child. So whether you get them into therapy or whether it's a family member that says, no, that's not true. Your mom or your dad, that never happened. They become incredibly outwardly usually defensive, upset, very much reject that, very much emotional, very much shut out, shut down,
oh,
completely
yeah.
disconnect. Like nobody can challenge the way they're thinking. They're not open to that.
I'm so glad you brought that up. That is so true. I mean, I have certainly many, many times been on the receiving end, being X'd out as a child or a family's therapist because there's a bit of reality seeping in. I'm trying to present certain things, and now I've become the enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, lesson after this session. What's yours, Trev?
I think mine is com how there are so many common threads
Hmm.
to recognizing that alienation is going on, that it looks different. And of course, everyone's a human, so they have different ways of behaving. But the
Hmm.
common threads, as we were talking about them, I'm just remembering so many situations. Those
Hmm.
common threads are there. And if parents are looking for that, looking for these things we're talking about, they might be able to catch some of this a little earlier
Hmm.
and possibly turn it around.
Yeah, I kind of have, as we were talking about it, I had two different perspectives. I had, Maybe someone who is the alienator listening in and thinking, oh, that's not me. I didn't do this. My ex is a horrible human and they created this problem all on their own. So my lesson after the session is kind of, I guess, a thought to that, which is you have to stand back. And if that is the case, you have to let that naturally come apart. You cannot force that. And if your goal is to get your child to recognize that, check yourself because what you're doing is abusive and it's life changing for your child and not in a good way. And then from the person on the other side, who's the parent who is being alienated, hang in there. That it is a long road, but there is absolutely hope at the end of it. Stay strong and know your worth, know who you are, know your truth. Don't let anyone rewrite that for you.
That's amazing. I have so many thoughts. Okay, we were in our series, so we'll hit some of those thoughts next time. And thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Trev.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.